Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Ted, hanging out with some nerds.
I'm Nate.
Nerdarchy is Dave.
Ryan.
And today we're going to do a player tip of working within the confines of law and society. But before we do that, why don't you head down to the description below, click the link for the Nerdy newsletter, sign up. It's a great way to get tips, learn how to game with us, all kinds of great stuff. So working within the law, the idea I had
Law and order.
Was... You know, campaigns exist within society, and everything has its laws, and we've been involved in a variety of games over the years. And, you know, things come up where it's like people do crazy things that the law is just not going to allow. So the example I've got is the person you suspect is the villain, or the person you're in contention with, is walking down the middle of the street, and by law, you have no justifiable reason to just straight up go attack him. Yet in games, I've heard and seen people like, well, that's the bad guy, so we're just going to go take him out right now. So
Vigilante style.
Vigilante style.
Broad daylight.
Right. So what do you guys see as problems of working within the law as players, and how do we balance that out?
Well, for one thing, it's not even vigilante style unless they're actually committing a crime. If they're not committing a crime, you're actually just committing assault.
Yeah, or murder.
Or murder.
Yeah.
You know, if they're actually doing something wrong, then you're a vigilante and maybe you got some ground to stand upon. But, you know, and we see this in comments and all kinds of things where people really just want an excuse to, you know, act out, go video game style, looking at you, Cleric of Chaos. I've had a lot of discussions with him on the, you know, in the discussions on this, and you know, you just can't do certain things. You know, people think playing a role play game is a license to do things you wouldn't normally do.
Everyone is James Bond. We can kill people.
Yeah, except for he was usually pretty slick about it. Like, usually there weren't a ton of witnesses around.
Right.
James Bond offs the guy.
Yeah, like, you know, you get into a barroom brawl and you pull a greatsword. Well, you've just escalated, you know, a simple fight into combat.
Yeah.
Warfare.
Yeah, like I have
Or attempted murder.
Yeah,
Because those people have reasonable expectations of when they're in a brawl fight in the bar, they're going to be getting hit and hitting drunk people.
Yeah, and then back and forth. So, like, I have an encounter in the adventure that I wrote that, like, it is just basically a bar fight. And, like, nobody tries to deal lethal damage in the bar fight until if the PCs do, you know, draw weapons themselves and start dealing lethal damage, then it escalates. And then, well, I mean, depending on how realistic of a game you want to run, like, the local law enforcement's going to step in there when people start stabbing each other in the middle of the bar. Like, at a fist fight, you just might end up, like, in the drunk tank for the night.
Right.
But if you, you know, if you start, like, cutting and killing people in the middle of a town or a bar, well, now you've got actual repercussions to deal with.
Or you launch fireballs.
Or if you launch fireballs. You know, well, you know, it's just totally an accident.
Or like,
I wasn't citing that specific example.
But it totally did happen.
Wild magic.
Wild magic is a hell of a drug.
Ted's example of you see the villain and walking through town, and you know.
Better yet, you put him like walking his niece, his like young niece through town or something like that. So it's like even like you have an innocent bystander now too, so you can't just do an area of effect spell at him.
So, well, maybe
some people still would, but yeah. Teflon Billy never bluffs.
So he's walking through town, and your players decide to assault him. And like you may even have this situation where bystanders come to his aid, you know. And suppose like
or guards happen to be going by,
or guards
to his aid.
You know, well, they could be bystanders too, I guess.
Yeah.
But but anyway, say it gets broken up, and they've attacked him, and the fight is stopped, and then he can bring the law into it and demand satisfaction.
Yeah.
You
could sue the party. Like, really, they end up in court.
Yeah,
it becomes a court drama. Yeah. It becomes like The Incredibles. Like, all the people suing like them for like rescuing them and the injuries they sustained. It's kind of, you could like take a page from that. In a way.
But you were trying to kill yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you definitely have those avenues to pursue, and you know, I guess the whole point is like it's just stupid the things that people do in the game, because you know, just certain things you cannot do. It's like you really need to ask yourself, would I do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it's like the inverse Steve Urkel. But yeah, like really, it comes down to the fault of the DM or the GM that allows it to happen
for no consequences,
without repercussion. Yeah, really.
I usually like to say to the players, you're in town, and that you definitely remember that that's against the law, so that they know, like, if they actually do this, there's absolutely going to be repercussions. So just in case they're in like adventure or dungeon mode and they just happen to be in the middle of town, get them kind of in the right frame of mind. Like, hey, you're in town, you just can't go murder a
guy
hobo.
show up and
Hey, did you notice that
Hey,
did you notice you're in town?
Yeah.
That would be hilarious, and like a like a callback to like old Windows. Like you have like a humor-based game that like the scroll shows up and unfurls. Like it looks like you're trying to do such and such.
It appears you're trying to commit murder in town in broad daylight in the middle of the street.
Yeah, a scroll with like eyes in the mouth, smiling. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's what just like to. I mean, if I've got to do it 5 times, I'm like, oh, forget this. Income town guards.
Yeah, like once a session, reminding people, about it until they finally get the hint, is fine. But if you're constantly, doing that, then it's like, well, they don't really care. Give them the consequences.
Well, and also too, like you have some characters that do like are purposely skirting the law, like a pickpocket that doesn't pickpockets isn't much of a pickpocket. So
that's true, and there's
you could get caught, but that's like the thrill of playing that character.
Oh yeah, if someone's third level and they're an assassin, I'm not going to remind them that they're not supposed to kill people in town, because I mean that might be completely their intent.
Yeah, well, you can remind them the way they're doing it is really stupid.
Yeah,
like you're in the middle of the street. The crowded street and broad daylight.
Well, no, crowded is actually good for a pickpocket. Like you want crowded.
Well, no, he's talking
assassin.
Yeah.
No, we do the opposite for the pickpocket. You realize you're in the middle of the street and no one else is around.
You should totally be. Yeah.
And then they say, hey, could I retcon putting on my disguise a little earlier today?
Although, I mean, for a bunch of people, like maybe if you have an injectable poison that like you bump past somebody, they feel a slight sting and you're quick.
Like, pokey ring or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. So you're doing that smart. Like you gotta break the law. Like intelligently.
Yeah, if you're gonna do
it's
it,
got to make sense.
It's got to make sense. Stealth is involved in that. No one's gonna see the quick bump in a crowded street. Now, if you and he are the only two on the street and you walk by, you bump into him, and then he falls over dead in 3 or 4 strides. Well, it's gonna be pretty clear that
did this just degenerate into a don't get caught? It's not against the law if you don't get caught.
It is totally not against the law if you don't get caught.
Well, that's operating within the bounds of society. Though is. Don't get caught if you're going to do that things.
Yeah.
And
part of it is don't do the things that are illegal. The other side is when push comes to shove, that when you actually are planning to do something that's illegal, you're not supposed to get caught. That's
doing it in a way that makes sense.
Yes,
it is really what it's about. It's like different circumstances require different actions, and you still have to. You have this parameter that you're boxed into that you have to operate within. You can choose just to totally disregard the law, but it doesn't mean you have to do it a way that you're flaunting it and then it's clearly you're going to have to deal with the consequences. The other way is you're going to do it in a way of subterfuge where your plan is to not get caught. So you're still taking in consideration the fact that you're bound by society and laws.
Well, so
and of course the third action is to not do it.
Yeah. So the interesting play, everything having consequences. So say that the party does have this like attempted brawl against the villain in town. They get incarcerated, because what they did was clearly a hostile villain action, and so they have to spend overnight in jail. And then that villain moves forward with his plot over the course of that night. Something happens that the PCs weren't there to avert because they're in prison. For a day or two.
Like he murders one of their NPC friends
or family members or something like that. He goes all Scott Garibay and kills one of their family members.
Or if he is higher up. If he's somebody in the law group, like he's a captain of a guard, or if he's in the noble group or some kind of courtier or whatever, they could be in there for weeks, and they could have a mysterious person drop by and get arrested, and then have to deal with somebody in there with them who might also be armed or have poison or some kind of.
Or he's a
thing
monk, an evil monk assassin. Yeah.
Shadow monk assassin
Yeah.
gets dropped on them.
Yeah.
Without their weapons and everything like that. Like it's probably like a slaughter fest there. But
Well, you know, like you could have 6 PCs and like some of them be spellcasters. So like they're without their weapons and like maybe he's like so you have a level, but you have a whole party against like one highly trained unarmed combatant. But yeah, that would be interesting. You have like this Jet Li sort of character show up.
Maybe he doesn't kill them though. Maybe he just beats them up.
Yeah. Shows them
Adding insult and injury to insult.
Yeah, he just like shows them the errors of their way.
and then he just shadow steps out of there, and everyone's like, "What happened?
So-
you guys got in a fight. You're in here longer now."
I was thinking, if you have players,
so much fun.
Yeah.
if you have players that are like this, one of the things you could do is when they first roll into town, you could have people in stockades with like signposts near them stating their crimes.
And like rotten fruit around them.
Yeah.
Bruises from people like kicking them and
Or you can have an event happens where there's a public hanging, and then again the person's crimes will be read off and they'll be summarily executed in a public fashion, and of course this draws huge crowds. This is actually considered entertainment, in these kinds of societies. Even today it is, or at least up to like 20 years ago it was. Right. One of the guys I used to work with was a carpenter that worked in Saudi Arabia, and every week they would go to the public executions. And wait to see it, and like they're so disappointed because a lot of times no one actually get executed, but like he's like the one time that someone did, the guys came back and they were like so distraught and kind of distressed, and he's like, well, what happened? He's like, well, the families didn't pay, and the thing is you bribe the executioner to use a sharp weapon.
yeah, well, that was a thing that used to happen too in the Dark
because they
Ages.
still behead people.
Yeah, well, this is in modern times.
The headsman, you bribe the headsman to like take a cleaner stroke and have a sharper weapon, like to do it to make it quick and clean. Yeah.
So you could literally like throw little details like that in there to really drive home the point that there's things I probably shouldn't do in town.
Right.
Yeah.
And that would be a
Reminder.
very grim way of reminding them.
And fun as the DM. Like, break the law at your own risk.
Yeah. But I mean, guys, do whatever you want. I mean, I'm not here to like, impinge on your freedom.
Right.
You're fine. Yeah.
So I don't know. You guys in the comments below, let us know how you deal with it in your game. Cleric class, I know how you do it. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over on nerdarchy.com.
While you're there, you can check out the store and get some sweet swag.
Also, patronize us in a good way over at Patreon.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.
Totally stole Ted's line.